Welcome to the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel. Like and subscribe for more content. It's a crazy world we live in. When you jump onto the internet and you jump into Glassdoor, you jump into Indeed, and you take a look at available positions, and you realize that there's a lot of positions out there that don't actually exist and are ghost jobs. But then the jobs that do exist, you really got to get past the ATS system to be seen. I want to show you today how to create a resume that'll get you past an ATS system, so that way a live human being reads your resume. The crazy thing is there's not too much information out there as far as the ATS systems are concerned and what they look for when they look at resumes. It's almost like these systems were designed to be cryptic, where it's a guessing game to figure out how do you get past a certain point in order to get your resume seen. So I decided the best way to figure this out would be to create my own ATS system. So I did. I built an ATS system. And for those that are not sure what ATS is, it's Applicant Tracking System. Basically what it does is it tracks resumes that are sent in for an application to a job. This uses AI to search these resumes for keywords to produce the keyword-based resumes to actual HR physical people to review. The problem is that there is a standard that these ATS systems follow. And if your resume doesn't follow this standard, most of the time, these ATS systems will just dump your resume. That usually results in some kind of automated general message that you get back at obscure times or obscure dates back in your inbox. Like for instance, nobody at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday is reviewing your resume. You know firsthand that's an AI bot generated response and that the resume never was seen by an actual person. So how do we do this that we can make it so your resume is seen by a person? So the first thing we want to do is cover the basics, which is understanding that if you create something called whitewashing a resume, which is a blank page or a page that has additional content on the sides that's hidden in white font, that the ATS system will automatically flag that font and then will flag the resume as being suspicious or fraudulent and delete it anyway. I'll give you a for instance on this, which is that if you add a whole bunch of keywords as to what we're looking at here, basically this would be somebody that's a business manager or business professional. These are the keywords that the ATS system is going to look for in a resume specifically to recommend that resume. Now, these words could change from different vendor or different provider. However, the ATS system format or formula will usually use the majority of these keywords if you're a business manager. This means that if you don't have these keywords in your resume, then the system will just skip you, even if you have the skill set to actually do the job. In the past, what people would do is they would highlight all of these words and they'd specifically go into the font and change the font to white. So that way you can no longer see it and it looks like it's blank, even though if we highlight it, you could clearly see that there's some kind of text here. The problem is that the specific code that goes along with the white font is a hashed value, and that hashed value exists in the ATS system. And it flags it if it sees that hashed value as hidden font or text, and will automatically delete your resume after flagging it. In addition, it records your email address if your email address is in the correct format and adds you to the flagged site or flagged client list, which means that even if you correct this in the future and apply for a job, that ATS system will automatically decline your resume. Since you don't want this to happen, you clearly don't want to do this. I'm not going to cover this in this specific video, but you can create a VB script and use a macro inside of Microsoft Word to change white from pure white to slightly above or below pure white, which would allow you to circumvent the ATS's policy for hidden text on the actual resume. Doing something like going into the actual font itself and going into more colors and changing it slightly to either a grayish or slightly more of a white obviously will still show it somewhat in the background. However, that won't flag inside of the ATS system. Though, you will get a notification indicating that something is wrong with the particular resume and that a person has to look at it, which may actually work to your benefit in providing that your resume would then be seen by an actual live person. Something else I want to review is the resume itself, because if we look at this particular resume, you would think this is a clean formatted resume and that a HR representative would appreciate this because of the organization in the resume. However, ATS will fail this resume, and you'll never get this as an HR rep. The reason why is because of the format. Since we have a page break here, and we have line information with a line down the middle and the information on one side and the information on the other side, the system won't scan this. In a lot of resumes, what you're going to see is that people are going to create the resume with a box like this. And the reason why is because you could really drag it around and you could change how this looks in your configured resume. And it's important to keep in mind that an ATS system can't scan the contents in this box, meaning that if you send a resume in a DOCX format or a DOC format, and that particular resume has a whole bunch of these text boxes in it, when the ATS system scans the resume, it comes back as blank and it flags the resume and deletes it, and usually it'll record the email address that it came from as flagged or spam, because the boxes themselves, the dialog boxes, cannot be scanned by an ATS system. It's at a different layer in the Word document. So as a result, all those resumes you send with those configured boxes to try to make things neat and organized, they just simply don't work. If we look at George's resume, we'll notice that George's resume is still laid out that same way, where we have the itemized boxes. Now, chances are George would have sent this as a PDF document. Now, if you send it as a PDF document, it can be scanned. However, it's not the correct format for an ATS system, which means that certain parts of this resume will be recorded. However, because keywords includes your name, your email address, and your location, you'll be missing keywords, which means that you won't be on the top of the list if you do get submitted to HR at all. It gets even worse here for Michael, because Michael has his resume formatted in a way that not only will it not pick up the keywords, but it's also not going to pick up most of the information in here. The reason why is because his formatted resume with his address at the bottom, his phone number, and his email address are in the wrong place. And as a result, the ATS system is going to skim the top part of this actual resume, not find this information, and his resume will be dumped. Again, even if he is the best candidate, and even if an HR rep would look at this and think, wow, that's one nice, cleanly formatted resume, the ATS system doesn't care. This person will never see that HR person. Here's yet another example of a resume that will literally never see the light of day. The system will probably see her name. However, because it's at the same level as a title of a job, it's going to get confused, and it's possible that project manager will become her name. It's also possible that since we have profile and work experience in the same level, we may get a conflict of information here. The software information likely won't exist at all, and because of the contact details being in the middle of the body under a picture, chances are nobody will ever see this resume. Now that we looked at a bunch of resumes that don't work, let's start to look at resumes that do work. In an ATS-based scan, the HR company or the AI company that's scanning the actual resume in this case will see the name, the address, the phone number, and the email address. This will likely populate in the correct fields on the ATS system. The professional statement or professional profile at this point is pointless in a resume going through an ATS system. Unless it contains a bunch of keywords for the particular job you're trying to find, I would skip this altogether because it's pointless and it doesn't do anything. Now, if an HR person sees it and it helps you get your foot in the door, great. But an ATS system doesn't care. The areas of expertise, this should be all keywords. I know the first thought here is to add the areas of expertise as for what you actually do in your career path, but in order to circumvent the ATS process and actually be put in front of a person, the areas of expertise should really contain the keywords for the job you're trying to get. And keep in mind, there are websites out there that will allow you to use the dictionary-based keywords and download them so that way you know all of the keywords for a particular job you're trying to find. If we move further down this resume, we're going to see professional experience. Professional experience is very important on the ATS side because once again, it's going to look for keywords and statements. It doesn't care whether or not you had a good relationship with your manager. It doesn't care whether or not you are a fun guy or you're friendly. It could care less. What it does care is about things like what we see here. So oversee 180 employees. Shouldn't say oversee, it should say manage 180 employees because oversee isn't a key word, but manage is a key word. Understanding that if you use keywords inside of your professional experience summary, what you're doing is providing more keywords for the ATS system to scan and see. And the more keywords that exist in your resume that the scanner sees in your resume, the more likely it is that your resume will end up on somebody's desk that's a physical human being to call you. Something else to add here is that in this resume, we have LinkedIn and Twitter. Don't do that on a resume. The reason why is because the ATS system will actually attempt to link into these locations. And it will go to them and look for keywords that are part of a different dictionary lookup. These words are basically flags. Anything that shows up as a flag on your resume through the ATS system will automatically disqualify you for the position, and delete your resume out of the system. If you want to provide the LinkedIn or the Twitter at a later date, go for it. Understand that if you provide the LinkedIn link and the Twitter link inside of an Indeed profile when it requests it, the system will use the ATS backend of the system to grab that particular URL and do a lookup on keywords that, again, will get you flagged if it's found. I'll give you, for instance, if you give your Twitter item and the ATS system searches your Twitter account for anything negative, where maybe you said, I hate this color on that car, it's not going to find car. It's going to see hate, and it will automatically red flag you and remove your resume. In this particular resume, if we zoom in here, we could see at the top, we could see 10 years IT department management and IT strategies. These three things are keywords. They're boldface. The system in the ATS world will take those boldface items and scan them first for items against what it has as a dictionary. Keep in mind, this configuration works a lot like a dictionary crack, meaning that there's a library of words on a system and a scanner that uses those words as keywords to find within documentation. There's also standardizations as far as the format is concerned inside of the ATS system, where certain formats will get bonuses and certain formats will be skipped altogether. And while the pretty colorful resumes work great for people, they don't work for AI, meaning that you're basically wasting your time. The other thing to keep in mind is font. Yeah, the font's very nice. It makes it look very good. However, font matters. The system generally looks for standardized fonts. So if you have bizarre fonts or fonts that look professional to a human being, but a computer just thinks of them as something outside of a normal font, then that also removes the candidacy from your resume, meaning that they will flag you or delete the resume. Because these systems get thousands of resumes a day, the systems have to filter out those resumes to put them in front of people. So to limit the amount of things that you could possibly be flagged for, you want to kind of stick to just a standardization practice. Unfortunately, as far as ATS is concerned, every single HR company out there has a different standard of what's acceptable. Something that I have found in my testing ATS system is that Calibri, as well as Times New Roman, seem to be two that exist in every single ATS system. So as long as your format of your font is either of those two settings, then you should absolutely have no problem bypassing the ATS system to have your resume seen, at least based on font. Some other things that are really stupid in ATS, but are true, unfortunately, is for this particular portion where it says oversaw all major medical IT projects for 10 plus years. The system doesn't know what 10 plus is. So either put 10 years or put 11 years, but don't put 10 plus, because when it scans it, it's not going to see that as a keyword. It's going to see 10, but not 10 plus. Again, a lot of these systems are based off of Linux, and Linux is case sensitive. So generally speaking, if you're going to use keywords, don't start off a sentence with a keyword because it's going to be capitalized. And most of the time, the words are not capitalized in the ATS library. Here's another resume that is 100% present in the ATS system, meaning that the ATS system would actually prefer this format. The reason being is that you would have your name, what you are, and then all of your contact information written on the right. You'll note that on this particular resume, it's a generalized location, but it's not a physical address. That's important because there's so many scam jobs out there, fake jobs and ghost jobs. You never want to give your full name, your phone number, and your physical address on any resume you send. That's a really easy way to end up with some form of identity theft by doing that. You don't know who you're sending the resume to. And since Indeed no longer requires an EIN number to register a company, that company may not actually be the company you think it is. Once again, don't include the LinkedIn or the GitHub. The reason for that is an obvious reason, which is that the ATS will scan for negative words. And if it finds negative words on either of those things, even if you're not the person writing them and somebody adds some kind of an issue to one of the projects you're working on in GitHub, it will see the negative connotation and automatically flag your resume. Another thing we'll see here on this resume, which is super important, is the email address. You would think that this would be a better way to do it, is to put an email address that is personalized or to a domain that you own. You'd be wrong. The reason, again, is in that keywords list, there are acceptable email addresses. Having a standardized email address such as yahoo.com or gmail.com or even live.com or outlook.com will automatically give you additional points towards your resume. Having something customized, even though it shows that you know how to set up a domain or know how to set up an Exchange server, will mean that the system will flag it as an unknown email address. The unfortunate side effect of this resume is that while it does have all the information we need at the top, which is important for the ATS system, the resume itself looks like it was created using those text boxes, basically like this, which means that as soon as ATS runs the scan on this, chances are it's going to see a blank page with some blue on it, and then this resume would be deleted. And the email address, which was likely already flagged, would be added as a spam list. But if we assume that this resume was created directly on the actual document and not created using those text box formats, then this resume is actually accurate. The soft skills, however, because they look like buttons, likely still wouldn't be scannable in the ATS system. Another thing is that the ATS system itself doesn't care about your interests, so you can actually remove them from your resume. In the event that the resume gets passed to an HR person, chances are the HR person likely wouldn't care about your interests either. I would say this is likely a good resume to use as a format. However, all the context in this resume needs work because, again, we have to base it off of keywords in order for this resume to be chosen by the ATS system itself. The stuff on the right-hand side under technical IT skills would help, but the things on the left-hand side under tested web applications, mobile apps, networks, sandboxes, etc., 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 doesn't really do much for you because it really lacks the keyword structure that's required for this to pass the ATS system. One of the biggest issues with this, unfortunately, is that since there's all these third-party HR companies and they're all shared with multiple companies, the AI inside of the actual company itself, for instance, say Bamboo HR is one of them, ADP is another one, there's My Workplace is a third. I believe you're also going to have Rippling in that list. Since they all use the same AI for all of their customers, when you send a resume to one customer that's on a Rippling infrastructure, and then you send that same resume to another customer on that Rippling infrastructure, the system has already reviewed your resume, meaning that it has already either keyed it as somebody that's a potential applicant for a job, or it has already flagged it, indicating that that particular resume is lacking the keywords for jobs that have X, Y, and Z in them. If you're one of the super unlucky people to have a resume that's set up like this, where you have the actual text box, and you send it to the Rippling system, and it flags you as spam, then any resume you send to a company that uses Rippling will automatically take that resume and dump it in the trash before it goes anywhere. The only way around that is that you would need to modify your email address, creating a new email address, and then you would need to modify your resume so that way your resume didn't meet that flag situation that happened earlier, at which point then you could apply to jobs. The flip side to this is the person that has the really good resume, that spent a lot of time and effort perfecting specifically what it is that they need in order to apply, they will end up with the job if they apply directly to HR or directly to a hiring manager that's a human being. Because your ATS configured resume to get past the system to speak to somebody will likely look amateur hour when it's sent to an actual HR person. And I believe that's probably the root of the issue right now in the job market with people applying for jobs, is that they don't understand that the ATS system doesn't care about this, doesn't know what to do with this, and won't pass this off to a hiring manager, while the person that applies with this particular resume gets past the ATS system, but the HR person looks at it and goes, well, this is not somebody that we want to hire because of the format of the actual resume. Another thing to keep in mind with ATS is that ATS doesn't care how many pages it is. That means that if you have a resume that's 15 pages long and you send it through an ATS system, ATS will review that 15-page resume, find more itemized keywords, and move you to the top of the list. Once HR sees the resume, you may be dumped. However, that'll get you past the ATS system. For decades, we were told single-page resumes, 2 pages at the max. But now with AI reviewing these actual resumes, that's no longer the case. The more pages, the more details, the more information, the more keywords you cram into it, the likelihood increases dramatically of you getting in front of an HR person to have a conversation. So based on what we've learned, we would need to create a resume that's fairly simple. We would need a name, the location, the email address, experience, availability, and then we could add certifications. Now, under certifications, we don't necessarily want to add that we have our MCSE or MCITP or a CCNA or, God, there's just so many of them. What we want to do is we want to add as many certifications that meet the ATS library of actual details and data. Meaning that if the library doesn't contain the actual certification that we have, we can add it, but knowing that if we add it, it doesn't necessarily equate to a job. Because while it might be added as an additional feature or function that the ATS system will record because the systems are set for machine learning, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to get our resume in front of a person that wants to review the resumes. So we would need to look through the current ATS versioning table of all the information that's available for a technical career or technical job. So my ATS system that I built myself uses these keywords. So if I add any of these keywords into my resume, then when the ATS system scans my resume, it would automatically take the number of those words, compare it to the list, and then give me a percentage of match based off of the information that's in the resume and the information that's inside of the actual list. If, however, I have 150 things under my certifications in here, and all 150 things don't match a single thing in here, even though I may be qualified for the job, because the ATS system doesn't know what those things are, or it's not written the same way, means that chances are I'm going to be skipped. Like for instance, MCSE. We all know that stands for must call someone else. But if in the list, MCSE is not defined as MCSE, or MCSE, or must call someone else, and only defined as one of these things, but that font and case doesn't match what we have in our resume, even though we have it in the resume, it'll be skipped. So this channel wouldn't be what it was if I didn't share you the workaround to this. You see, in Microsoft Word, we have the ability to add a watermark. And as we can see on the screen, the resume now has a lighter gray hue to it. And in order to do that, all we have to do is click on Design, choose the watermark, go to Custom Watermark, and then select a picture. Now for this particular resume build, I decided the easiest way to do this is to use Microsoft Paint. Find Microsoft Paint in your Start menu. Once you're in Paint, all you have to do is just fill the entire screen with a light color. I used light gray because that's all that's necessary. And at that point, I select the picture, make sure it's not set to washout, set it to a larger scale so it covers the entire page, hit Apply and hit OK. And what that'll do is it'll fill the background of your Word document in gray. Now at this point, what you could do is you could paste in all of the keywords in the same color gray as a background. The ATS system won't flag this because it's no longer white, it's gray. So the hashtag value of the image of the actual font, the text, is not the same. And as a result, the ATS system, only knowing what a whitewash is, won't flag the change in the font color. At that point, you can create your text boxes to sit on top of it and put in the text boxes the actual resume details that you want to share. For instance, something like what this guy has. That means that once the ATS system scans it, it will find all of the keywords. The keywords will cause your resume to be 100% match for whatever the position is. The only thing that needs to physically be on this page is the keywords, and then at the top, the actual location. So your name, email address, physical location, and anything else you want to share at the top. For instance, what we have here. So if we have this physically on the page, we at that point can create containerized items as far as our resume is concerned, just like the good resume, which means that the ATS system will pass this off as a 100% match, and the HR rep, when they see it, will see an organized, well-written resume, which will greatly enhance the chances of you being hired. Now, obviously, this is high risk, because in doing this, you could still be flagged if the system gets modified or if somebody catches on to what you're doing. And since all these HR companies are blanketed and shared between multiple different companies, doing this is a risk where you may have to recreate a new email address and create a new resume to actually apply to the job. Now, I really hope this helps you guys out in finding work, the ones that are out of work, and understanding why it is that you may not be getting responses that you think you should be getting. Another super important rule of thumb: only apply to jobs on Indeed that are 7 days old or newer. Indeed has given the ability to these companies to create API update scripts, which makes those jobs look like they're new, but they could be years old. However, applying to jobs that are 7 days old or newer will really reduce the risk of you falling victim to a ghost job. Anybody else has anything else to add that'll help people find a job? Throw it down in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching. Thank you for watching the Generic Tech Support YouTube channel. Find the content of this video at https://generictechsupport.com/#channel.